Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fleet's Catchup Ramblings. Yes, we're back. We are absolutely back. We're so back, it's unequivocally back. We're the most back it's possible to be. In fact, we're so back, we're front. If you can believe it. We've gone all the way around. There we go. Just gotta go through my pre-flight checks. There we go. Do that, do that, do that. Then do that. Do that. And... ooh, funky new stage. Every time they change something on Discord, it gets me. Every time! And... might as well yeet the ping off into the void, see what happens, run up the flagpole, see who salutes. Or, probably, in this case more accurately since it's Ramblings, runs away screaming that the end of the world is about to happen.
I don't know, that sounds more like you.
Oh, you cheeky. You grumble. I don't know. Sometimes I just, I can't get away with this.
Okay, Colonel Failure.
Oh, I haven't watched him in ages. Ages. He's still going?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Good for him. Wow, we really did get a lot. Wow, we did get a lot of questions on 75. Good gravy. Holy smokes, that's got to be a record. Yeah, 75 was a good one. Right. Let me check everything as it should be. Yep.
And to provide a little bit of visual background for people sitting in chat, I might as well stream.
Fair enough.
Just some sea power.
How do I do that? Monk. There we go. And now I need to make sure I'm never looking at that, so that I don't have to deal with it, so that I don't want to watch it. Stop. I don't want to watch it, because my computer will explode if I watch it. Alright, so... let's get started. So, on Discord, question 6. Do you think the myth about British tankers who were getting cooked inside Grants and Shermans in North Africa, or I assume that should be what do you think? Does that mean British tanks in Africa doesn't cook their tankers inside? I think everyone's tanks in Africa were war materials.
Dragon, you're...
Yeah, I know.
So you can't, you're not recording quality at all.
Yeah, Chief, I'm sorry, Dragon.
Anybody's tank in World War II in North Africa is going to be...
toasty?
Horrendously uncomfortable approaching dangerous temperatures.
I mean, I was going to go with toasty, but that works too.
Like, you're going to have everything open when you can open every single hatch. You're going to have it open all the time, and even that is going to be...
Apologies about that. The wind chose the exact moment.
Yes. But, well, okay. Where are
I
we?
don't think that's not... that's not what that question means, by the way. What this Tommy Cookers is explicitly referring to, that in particular American tanks had... well, it's said that American tanks had the tendency to cook off far more than the British tanks did, especially ammunition-wise. And it was, I believe there is actually a rate that they were able to bail out British tanks slightly more successfully than American tanks until you get stuff like Sherman.
Yeah, on the M3 Lee, for a lot of the crew, there's not a good evacuation setup.
Stuart's okay. M3 is Stuart is okay.
Oh no, Stuart was not liked.
Yeah, Stuart. There's a great video on that the Chieftain has, but
Oh, of course, the oh my god, the tank is on fire test.
and the M3 Stuart fails that.
Now, this is not to say the British tanks were much better, but in certain tanks, in certain regards, they were slightly better.
Look, having a hatch is better than not having a hatch.
Yeah, but then you get to Sherman, and it's just a quantum step change in ability to leave the tank when it's on fire.
Yes, and it was definitely very good, but it was about on par with the British Churchill, because Churchills were wonderful to bail out of.
Right. So, Discord, question 7. Why didn't we see an interceptor or fighter version of the Fairy Delta 2? If they did, do you think it's going to be better than the F-106 as an interceptor or the F-4 as a fighter? Would the RAF never have bought the F-4 if there was a fighter version of the Delta 2? Politely, the Fairlie Delta 2 was a supersonic research aircraft and was always intended to be so. There was never any scope for a conversion to military use. It's a research aircraft and designed to be that. Any fighter that comes out of the project will basically just take the research data that the Fairlie Delta gives. I mean, to be fair, the Fairlie Delta does feeds the British supersonic aircraft program. It helps make the Lightning possible. And now, admittedly, the wing shape is different. But, and this is a big but, without the supersonic data that the Fairlie Delta 2 provides, well, you don't get a lot of the same design choices in various British supersonic programs. But there's no scope to turn it into a fighter aircraft. It's just not. It's just not. You're better off designing a new project from scratch, which is what they did. It's why you got the Lightning. Basically. That was fairly easy. Again, Discord. Question. Hang on. It's the 1880s. Fleet has been picked to become the new naval designer and head of the French Navy. How would he change the French Navy? Why would he make it so? By ordering more Hoches, making every other French ship look like Hoche, designing a successor to Hoche, named the Hoche 2, the greatest mistake France ever made. For the love of God! Okay, seriously, I answered this question on Brew Ships. I answered it in this. I am sure I answered one like it on this Monday's Ramblings. In fact, I'm fairly certain that I answered basically this question last week. Now, it wasn't worded exactly like this, but I have already said how Fleet would run the 1880s French fleet. So I would kindly refer you to...
Yeah. I'm going to throw Fleet a bone here. He's definitely answered this one.
Twice.
Multiple times.
Yeah. In the same week. Okay, Discord question. In terms of the MBT Kampfpanzer 70, which version would you have? The American or the German one? Even though they have the same chassis and looks, some parts inside the tank are different than one another.
I would take the successor to the American one if I had to take something out of that program. The one that's pared down and simplified some.
Yeah.
There's really no need for that autocannon at all. And there's a lot of problems with that tank from the premise of that tank. To begin with, so whichever one is cheaper, I'd prefer. And that tank has no growth room. It's not. Let me put it to you this way. There's a reason the Soviets went to the 125. It's because they thought that the MBT-70/KPZ-70 program had armor equivalent to what would show up later in Leopard 2 and Abrams. Now, that's not really something you can control, but even looking at those designs, they're not set up for the revolution in armor that is Nera in the West. They're just not set up for it, and you would end up in a similar scenario to where you're kludging Nera onto tanks, and it just doesn't work out. The Germans had the better autoloader. That is a point in their favor. But to be honest, those tanks are going to have such a low availability rate, it probably doesn't matter. You're probably going to be using your previous generation of tank anyways, because of maintenance issues. And also your driver's vomiting into everything.
Yeah. So, question 9 on Discord. Do you think the Nimrod is the best propeller maritime patrol aircraft in the Cold War, better than the P-3, Argus, and the IL-38? Also,
Nimrod was jet.
Yeah, I was about to say, Nimrod is a jet aircraft, and also...
And no, I wouldn't say it's better than the P-3. It was decent, but I wouldn't... And it was perfectly valid and fine.
It's also
I wouldn't say it was better
niche.
than the P-3.
Like,
yeah,
like Nimrod is maritime patrol. P-3 is I'm going to destroy that submarine with a sledgehammer, pitchfork.
No.
Well, it is also a maritime patrol aircraft, but it can also destroy that submarine with a sledgehammer and a pitchfork.
Yeah, and do anti-ship with harpoon.
Yeah, I forgot the P-3 can carry harpoon.
And carry 4 of them.
Oh. No, Nimrod wasn't the best. It was by far one of the fastest. Like, if you want to go and poke something quickly, you scramble a Nimrod. It's gonna get there out of all the NATO maritime patrol assets. Nimrod's gonna get there the quickest. But it's not bad. But I'd argue that there are better platforms. And as for the Argus being second place, the thing with the Argus is it doesn't even have turboprops. The Argus is a radial engine driven craft. It can stay up for ages, but it's using radials at a time when most of the rest of the world's militaries are switching over to turboprops. But again, it's not like I'm saying it's bad, but with maritime patrol aircraft of the Cold War, it's basically, can it fly for a decent endurance? Can it carry buoys? Can it carry a decent crew? Can it carry mines and torpedoes?
There's a reason P3 was so widely adopted. Like, just flatly, and lasted in service for so long.
Yeah. Still in service in some militaries.
Yes.
Question 10. If built, do you think the CVA-01 is going to be a better carrier than the Forrestal's? If this is true, would the US make changes to the Kitty Hawk design to have an edge on carrier design? Well, first of all, regardless of what CVA-01 comes out like, the US is not changing the Kitty Hawks.
Yeah, CVA-01 doesn't have bearing on the Kitty Hawks.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. Like, there's no... What would have bearing on the Kitty Hawks being majorly changed would be if the Soviets started fielding carriers. Because you wouldn't have the Kitty Hawks as we know them, you would have more Enterprise-class CVNs.
Yep.
But...
CVA-01 is...
The CVA-01 I would not consider, from what I understand of the design, I would not consider a better carrier than the Forrestal class. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't need to be. It's not what the Brits are looking to get out of it.
No. It's a fleet replenishment program to give them a decent carrier.
And it is a very solid carrier. But it is not the attack carrier that the Forrestal's are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not carrying things like A3
Mm-hmm.
or A5.
No.
I mean, you could probably kludge them on there, but
That's not
like,
that's not what the British like. It's not.
yeah,
Like
it's
you
not
said.
what they're looking for.
Oh boy, this is okay. This one's a zinger, and I'm just gonna shut up and let you talk, because I ain't got no bearing on this one. Discord question 11. In terms of the present-day situation, do you think the Polish military can handle Russia on their own, even without NATO support, if there's a conventional war against Russia? I'm going to say no on that one.
There's no such thing as a purely conventional war against Russia, even if nuclear weapons are not used. Because you have the threat of nuclear weapons being used. And if you do not have nuclear weapons, and there's nobody standing by to provide that deterrence, if your opponent decides to use nuclear weapons, and I'm quoting U.S. strategic thought and policy here, then your conventional deterrence is moot. Okay? The Poles are going to be the backbone of NATO's force in Eastern Europe with the course they are on. As they are now, they can't be. They do not have the armored vehicles present at the moment because they have donated so many. That's fine. They're modernizing. But going forward, that ground force totaling 400,000 personnel, obviously not all of that is going to be frontline combatants or combat support, stuff like that. You've got a whole bunch of other things that go on the back end in a uniformed military.
Mm-hmm.
But that force, as it modernizes, as it grows, is going to become the backbone of, for lack of a better term, a modern CENTAG.
Mm-hmm.
And that is absolutely a for lack of a better term.
It's just further east this time.
Yes.
We've moved the goalposts.
As it is now, that and US 5 Corps will form it, in all likelihood. But
Situation's changing day to day at this point.
well, not only that, we don't know what's going to happen with Ukraine. Are they going to end up in NATO? And then that suddenly changes things quite a bit. But no, the Polish military, even when it's fully up, it will do very well, but it's not going to be capable on its own unsupported. There's a lot of enablers that it needs.
Yep.
For example, they don't have AWACS birds.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they've got F-35s, that's great. Without AWACS, you're really cutting into your F-35 fleet to try to use them in that role, and you need them for a lot of things if you're Poland. To carry a lot of the work, because your other fighters are F-16s and FA-50s, which aren't really capable of doing some of these higher end roles or going toe to toe with some of these higher end Russian aircraft, because they just don't carry the weapons to do it and they don't have the physical performance. So the answer is no. I mean, they'll be a bulwark, but they're not going to be capable of doing it on going alone, and that shouldn't surprise anyone.
Knight, with the best will in the world, the Nimrods are at the end of their tether. They needed to go. There's only so much we can do with them. They were at the end of their airframe lives. They'd had long careers. And politely, canning the program was a good idea. Politely. They were throwing good money at an aircraft that had given good service, but it was time to let the Nimrod fleet die. And now we have Poseidon, which is good and capable, and a worthy successor to Nimrod. So I think we won. Whoopee. Happy fleet noises. I will admit, I do have a soft spot for the 737. Don't know why, but anything 737 shape makes me go neuron activation. Probably because I've flown in 737 so many times.
I'm gonna have to say I'm not a fan of the 737. If you got E175, E175 is where it's at.
Why are you not the ground and appreciating all the hugs you get?
Well done, Sickling.
For a while there, the E175 was the only thing you could get in and out of Durango.
Hey. Oh, we have fun. Oh, we do. We do have fun. Right, next question. And it's a fairly open and shut one. Discord question 12. Do you think the B-52G and the B-1 Atlantic could conduct the Black Buck raid with less air-to-air refuelings and carry more firepower than the Vulcan? And also, can it take off from their bases in the continental United States? Unlike the Vulcan, where it has
I've
to refuel
answered this
multiple
already.
times in the air. But also, the answer to that question is yes, 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 yes.
B-52 can do that with 1, maybe 2 refuelings. From Louisiana, from the basin, from Barksdale.
And they can not just drop a few bombs on the airfield; they can basically flatten it, crater it, destroy
Yeah,
it.
they can do that. They can do that with the full internal bomb load. And with a couple more refuelings, they could do it with their externals.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did the math on it, Moo, based on what we have. They'd be able to do it with only a handful of refuelings.
Mm-hmm. Knight, we won't see an Airbus competitor to the P-8 until basically a lot of the European maritime patrol aircraft fleets come up for replacement.
There's not going to be one because everybody in Europe outside the French are. Well, okay, yes, technically there is, but let me put it this way: everybody's going with P-8 unless they're France, pretty much at this point. Unless some things change.
And the thing with P-8, it's probably the least... I know why you're saying what you're saying, but P-8 is probably one of the least vulnerable things to having the parts cut off for it. Because unless they're going to tell Boeing, stop sending 737 parts to operators in Europe, then there will always be some way to shenanigan parts for the Poseidons. To keep them flying. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just the truth.
No, they're not going to design and develop an MPA earlier unless there's the demand for it, and there was not the demand for it then.
Yep.
So that's just the reality that it is. It's not the company's fault. It's the procurement systems of the countries who didn't want them. Or, really, the people who controlled the budget and didn't want to pay for it.
Yep.
But there also wasn't the need.
Yeah.
The submarine threat at the end of the Cold War cratered. France only like a couple years ago started the Atlantique replacement, as far as I remember. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that only started a couple years ago.
Oh, those poor old birds. Good lord. They're having a rough time. I mean, good gravy.
Yeah.
They've been in. Whoa, they've been.
Phoenix is right. They were going to do a joint thing with Germany, and Germany just went, screw it, we're going to go with P-8.
Good God, they've been knocking along. Christ. Yeah, those antiques have been going for a while. Good
Yeah,
God,
and
gravy.
in the 2000s night, there was basically no need from a global submarine threat.
Fleet, we get they've been going a long time. No need to repeat it 5 times.
But, 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 twin engine plane go burr. Oh dear. Right. Next question is one of... It's got to be closing in on the record for the longest question we've had on Ramblings in a while. So I'll need a bit of time to read it out. So, Discord. Question. A scenario based on zeros over the Med. It's the 22nd of October 1940. Due to how far into planning Operation Judgment was, the British don't include the IGN into the operation for a dawn strike, so the raid of Taranto is by HMS Illustrious and Eagle. By the end of the strike, Andrea Doria and a handful of destroyers and cruisers have also been damaged alongside the OTL losses, making RN Vittorio Veneto and Giulio Cesare the only battleships available to operations, alongside the remaining cruisers and destroyers that managed not to be targeted. Due to the planned invasion of Greece, slated to happen in about a week, the Regia Marina orders the retreat of their remaining ships at Taranto to the Adriatic, so they can defend the supply route between Italy and Albania. However, during the retreat, they're intercepted by the IGN expeditionary fleet containing 3 Congos and Soryu, alongside necessary escorts, which are patrolling in the area in hopes of finding the Italian fleet for a decisive battle after the British strike. How would this hypothetical naval engagement go? What losses could we expect to see from both sides? I'm sorry, but that's the Japanese are walking away from that one with a W. They have a carrier and 3 Congos. The Regia Marina only has 2 capital ships, and only one of them is modern. The Japanese are going to walk away from that whistling. Maybe they have a battered Congo. Maybe they've lost a Congo. But, well, that's if the Japanese even consent to get into a gunfight. Sorry, you can just keep going, I'm going to keep bombing you, and bombing you, and bombing you, and bombing you, until you die. They don't have to engage in a gunfight. They have Soryu. So you can just keep lobbing aircraft at them till they keel over.
I would not want to be a Congo up on the receiving end of those guns, though.
I mean, that's true. The Littorio's guns are going to hurt. Not sure how...
And they also have to find the Italians. So what do the Japanese have? Is it just the Congos and Soryu?
So it's the Congos, Soryu, along with necessary escorts, so presumably 2 to 4 light cruisers, and 1 to 2 flotillas of destroyers.
Well, they're going to be light on scouts. Scout aircraft.
Yeah, because the Japanese...
Remember how the...
Yeah, I know...
like...
You're right. You kind of cut off mid-flow there.
I just kind of left it there because, I mean, that's kind of where it is. Yeah, so they're probably going to have a heavy cruiser or 2 in that formation as well, because that's just...
Probably one of the Tonays.
That's the service the heavy cruisers provide.
Yep.
But that is a very powerful formation in the Med.
Mm-hmm. The problem is that we know the capital ships that are there, but we have to guess at the screen. And the screen is going to matter. If the Italians... Let's say, if the Italian battleships are surrounded by whatever is left of the Italian fleet, that's basically everything, and it's all running to the Adriatic, that's going to be a horrible, horrible engagement. Because that's just a lot of mass. That's a heck of a lot of mass. If it's the Italian battleships and a light escort, then it's going to be the Japanese's fight to win. And again, we don't know what the Japanese have either. We've had to guess. I think it's one of those battles that's going to depend on how the carrier does. Because Littorio probably can smack a Congo and a half. Although poor old Giulio Cesare is going to have a bad time with whichever Congo is engaging her. I think it's one of those things that you'd have to wargame it in order to figure out. I wish I could get my copy of Fighting Steel working, but my computer doesn't like it. I could probably wargame this out with Fighting Steel, but, well, it's an old game. Getting it to work is a bit off-kilter.
Maybe we could bring up Phoenix?
Of course, if he wants to come up.
I'm not sure if Phoenix is able to do voice right now.
If he wants to come up, he can come up. If he doesn't, then he can't, and that's fine. Both options are fine. Right. Okie dokie. So, okay, there we go. Discord question 13. Do you think the Dreadnought SS... Oh boy. Do you think the Dreadnought SSBN is going to be better than the Columbia-class SSBN? Is the superiority of the Dreadnought design the main reason why Columbia's introduction to the fleet is delayed? Well, no. No.
That's not how any of this works.
Yeah. And first of all, I know who asked this. It's Gunnery Officer. Gunnery Officer, for an American, you have a strange fascination with trying to find things that are better than American stuff and asking questions related to that whole idea.
The reason that Dreadnoughts have had, or that Columbia's had delays is because the U.S. is trying to build a submarine that big. And is actively building them right now.
Mm-hmm.
They use the same, like they literally use a common missile module. So from the perspective of an SSBN, there's no difference there.
Yeah, basically. It's just the two ships are basically...
Let me check something, because... The Columbias are more heavily armed as well.
Nice.
So when it comes to being a SSBN, I can tell you which one's better right now, given same missiles, same missile module, and the number of tubes. It's the Columbias. They're the better SSBN. They carry 30% more.
But that doesn't mean the Dreadnoughts are bad. It's just that the UK...
No, it just means they're smaller.
Yeah, the UK doesn't need something like Columbia.
Yeah, the Dreadnoughts are only 12 tubes.
That's all we need. Each of those hypothetical missiles will be able to be moved to the hilt and back.
Well, it's not what the UK needs for a survivable, credible deterrent.
It needs sneaky submarines.
And by the way, Fleet, if you fully MIRV the missiles out, you cut the range down considerably on the missile.
Oh, yeah.
Like, a lot.
Yeah. You don't have to ping me, Moo. I am reading chat. No.
Yeah, and this becomes a problem. This becomes a problem.
Service date on both Dreadnought and Columbia.
So Columbia's been encountering delays, but the Navy is still confident they're able to hit that no-miss patrol thing. So they'll have Columbia in before the oldest Ohio SSBN retires.
Do we know when that's supposed to be?
We don't have a good time frame on that specifically because there is things they can do to extend.
Brandon, calling what is defending the capital nuclear-tipped SAMs is a gross understatement. The Russians have the nuclear-tipped ABMs defending Moscow are SAMs in the loosest sense of the word.
That's not what that Fleet, they are
I thought they had special ABMs, or did they retire those?
They are, and that's a function of SAMs. Like, that is a SAM.
Yes, but you can have a SAM that can do ABM work, but you can have an ABM work that can't be a SAM. If you get my drift. Like, Patriot can do pull double duty. I don't think the things surrounding Moscow can engage aircraft.
Surface-to-air missile does not necessarily mean engage aircraft. Surface-to-air missile encompasses a whole plethora of things, from stuff only able to do counter-rocket artillery mortar, stuff only able to engage drones, all the way up to stuff designed to engage ICBMs or engage bombers 400 nautical miles away.
Okay. Well, there you go. Consider me told. Question 14. Why is it today that the United States Marine Corps only operates rocket self-propelled artillery? The HIMARS
They don't.
are not
They
howitzers.
operate tube guns. They operate M777s.
Well, there you are then. Well, that was easy. Discord question 15. What is your opinion on the AMG 65 Maverick? Would you rather have this on your aircraft to conduct tank busting or precision strike missions? Or would you rather have Brimstone, the AGM-130, the French AS-30, or the Soviet KH-29 for the similar role?
Okay, none of these are equivalents. None of these are equivalents at all. They're all optimized to do different things. Brimstone is literally the most optimized for tank busting. Maverick is the most multi-role, and AS-30 has its own problems. Because of its origins. But so it really comes to, if you're solely looking at tanks, Brimstone. But also moving into the time period that Brimstone really becomes very good at that, the US is already pursuing a successor to the Maverick. Maverick was designed with an ability to, well, initially it was really designed for any structure role. But it does have a serious capability to bust tanks, and it comes about a lot earlier than Brimstone. Maverick comes out of the Vietnam War experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason there is a version of Maverick that'll go after bridges. There's also a tank busting version of it, but that just uses a dummy thick shaped charge. But that's also something you can use against bunkers.
That's not a word I ever expected to hear you say.
What, dummy thick shaped?
Come on.
Followed by charge?
Oh, for God's sakes.
You walked into that one. I wasn't gonna go anywhere near that.
God damn it.
But you brought attention to it.
Fuck.
So you got to reap the rewards.
Whoopee. That's my luck.
Cyclic, roll a d6 for psychic damage.
It's sounding more like it's going to be a nat 20 as the result.
Super critical hit. Fleet defeated.
No, we already know it hit. What we're rolling for is the
that's what I'm saying. It sounded like it's going to be a nat 20. Anyways, so trying to compare these things is
not ideal.
Just don't, because only one of these was designed purpose built for that role. And it was designed dramatically later with a whole nother set of capabilities. So,
yeah. Drydock question 16. Do you think? Sorry, Drydock. Sorry. Discord question 16. Do you think the IGN has the best pre-war heavy cruisers of all the major naval powers? Do you think they could win a surface engagement against a County or a York? Well, yes, a well-handled IGN heavy cruiser could probably win an engagement against any other treaty or immediate post cruiser.
Yes, but they could also catastrophically lose it.
Oh no, this is what I mean. Like this is what I say. Like they can.
From the first hit.
Yeah, they can. It doesn't mean they will.
In a way that no other heavy cruiser can catastrophically lose it. Like, we're talking splinter-only protection over the turrets. Like, I mean, now, to be fair, they weren't the only ones who did that.
Yeah. Pensacola's.
I'm not thinking about the Pensacola's, honestly. They're not the ones that would surprise people. I'm thinking about some of the British cruisers.
Yeah, some of the but then again, it's all what's it called? It all comes out of the oh bloody hell, the treaties.
Yeah, but some treaty cruisers...
To be honest, I wouldn't be looking at the British. I'd look at the French ones.
Oh yeah, some of the French ones are bad.
Oh yeah, like it's everybody. Everybody goes through a phase.
When we talk about the Japanese, I mean, they're doing this all the way through it. They don't come out of this phase because they're so focused on speed and armament. And realistically, they only start getting themselves one gun over their main rivals with it, and they're sacrificing so much.
And their turrets aren't even armored. Yeah. It's sad.
These heavy cruisers, yeah, they have the potential to be incredibly devastating, including to their own side. Hello, Mogami.
Oh no!
I have to get the comment in there. That's not a serious analysis thing, but I have to get the comment in there. I am required.
Actually, I have a lot to say about treaty heavy cruisers, but I have to go. So maybe we can pick this up again in like an hour.
Yeah, we can. Fleet, are you okay circling back to this one? So
I suppose because
if not, I know Foxo wants to basically take over after Fleet this evening, so it could be discussed then.
Yeah,
right.
probably
right.
Probably a good idea.
See y'all in a bit.
So I'm gonna plow through the questions. Plowing through the questions. Discord question 17. What if the British ramped up the defence of Malaya and Singapore with at least one tank battalion supported by artillery before 1941, which consisted of Crusader, A13, or Tetrarchs? Would these tanks plus the infantry and artillery be able to hold the Japanese force for at least 2-3 months?
No. Doesn't matter with
how is it getting there?
Well, even if you got it there and you kept it supplied, without the necessary improvements to the air power infrastructure, as well as early enough introduction of enough fighters, enough bombers, right, enough attack aircraft into that theater so they can acclimatize to it, learn how to fly in it, learn how to deal with the weather, learn all of those things in time, it doesn't matter. And the British Empire did not have the resources to do that and maintain what they needed at home. There's a reason it was deprioritized.
Yeah, like, at best they're getting probably A13s, or probably they're not even getting any sort of tank like that. They'll be getting Vickers Mark 6. Probably just the machine gun variants as well. So
I mean, it's a moot point what tank they get anyway.
Yeah, because
they're but I'm going through the aspect of the question, because I do agree, like all these defense preparations do is give the Japanese a better defensive position later. But yeah, like it won't make any sizable difference. But also, Britain can't afford to probably send any decent vehicles there because, let alone more troops and such, they're needed in Europe.
We got a wind problem again.
Yes, I know, unfortunately. The problem is, the British Isles tends to like to be windy.
Ah, yes, wind. Question 18. What is your opinion on the acoustic homing Mark 27 torpedo? Do you think it's quite an effective torpedo for the submarine to use to at least damage the pursuing surface vessels? Yes, it's a self-defense weapon. It's a... I am going to fire this, then run like heck. You get 12 knots on a good day with a following wind from it. It's... I mean, put it this way. The Mark 37, which, yeah, less said about them, well... The Mark 27 was, began service in 1943. Then you get the Mod 4, which comes in post-war, which is slightly faster. I mean, to be fair, the Mark 27, when it's in its original form, is basically a self-defense weapon. It's basically, right, I'm launching this to make the escorts go away. In its Mod 4 form, you get the speed up to about 15 knots, which is just enough that in the post-war period, against some of the older boats that you're dealing with, you can actually use it as a submarine-to-submarine guided weapon. But it lasts until 1960 when the Mark 37 replaces it in that role. Anyone else got any comments, or have I pretty much got that one done?
I think we can move on.
Yeah. Question 19. Thoughts on US tanks with oscillating turrets like the T-69, T-57, T-58, and T-54E1? Didn't the turret and autoloader design show any promising performance for the tanks?
It didn't really matter because they weren't... they were discarded for a reason. They weren't as fightable. They couldn't be upgraded with stabilizers. There was a serious concern about, and this is the big one, NBC protection. There's a reason they didn't go anywhere.
So, question 20, and this has got to be one of the most leading questions I've seen asked in a while, and it's not even Knight asking it, which is a surprise. Question 20. What if the US... And I want you to let me finish and give my answer before anyone else jumps in, because I want to correct a few things that I actually know. What if the United States Army Air Force was able to start serial production of the P-40 in October 1944? Would the USAF be able to send them to either the Pacific or Europe? Or do you think the P-80 can't even compete with the late war version of the Spitfire and the 109, and would the P-80 be easily mowed down by the 262? Okay, first of all, the P-80 Shooting Star, you're not really moving the needle that much in terms of production. You've dropped it back by about... You're basically talking about pushing the pre-production YP-80s to be full-scale produced, because they were produced in late 44. Those aircraft did come to Europe, and they saw action in reconnaissance, and they actually were also used to try and catch and shoot down the Arado 234s that were providing the Germans with their recon information in the Italian theatre, although they never actually caught an Arado 234. Secondly, the P-80 or F-80 was very much an aircraft out of the early jets. The Me-262 is an interceptor. It's an interceptor and a fighter bomber. The P-80 is a fighter. If it comes down to a dogfight, where both craft start with equal energy, the P-80 is going to absolutely wipe the floor with an Me-262. It's just more nimble, more maneuverable, and I'm sorry, I know it doesn't have cannon, but those 50 cals are going to hit like a brick. A plate glass brick thrown through that German pilot's window. As a jet, it has strengths and weaknesses compared to late war piston engine aircraft, but that's again a result of the difference in the way jet and piston engine aircraft fight. And that was made obvious during the end of World War II in the way the Germans handled their Me-262s and the British learned to handle their Meteors. You don't fight a jet aircraft the same way you fight a piston-engined aircraft. You don't fly them the same way either. Okay. Okay. Fleet.
Moo,
Fleet's
do you
rant
want
is
to
done.
get pulled up into voice to handle this?
Yeah. Fleet's rant is done. I've done my rant. I've said my piece. But yeah, like I say, there's a lot of misconceptions here about the P80 in that question. But yeah, no, add the P80 entered service, they're going to be racking up kill counts. Yeah, the P80s are absolutely going to be racking up kill counts. And they can actually have the range because of the way they can handle drop tanks. They can actually do bomber escort missions. They can step into that role.
So, while I'm waiting to hear from Moo,
He can't talk, but he can type, he says.
Broadly speaking, the P80 is, and I would actually argue still even in armament because of how low velocity the standard 262's armament was. Broadly speaking, it is the superior jet aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a fighter.
It's armament. Well, even if you were going to use it as an interceptor, to be brutally honest,
mm-hmm.
The 262 has a ton of problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the 262 has higher thrust. It has swept wings. It also has a serious problem with its jet engines if you're too aggressive on the throttle compared to even the other early jets. So there are aspects of the 262 that are better, but as a platform to fight a war with, to show up with a force of, the P-80 is just better.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Oh, and those 650 cals were not up to the speeds yet like we were in the Korean War. They're still very useful.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. So, very quickly, Knight, I'll just very quickly answer this because I know it matters to you. So, your first toy playthrough for Navy, who would you suggest? For a naval playthrough, you can't really go wrong with the USA. You don't have to commit ground troops to basically any conflict. Unless the AI comes to you. You can basically naval to your heart's content. Hello, Paul.
While that is technically true, Britain and Japan actually are probably slightly better because they get more naval focuses.
Yeah, but with Britain, you've got the war in Europe, and with Japan, well, you've got the war in China.
Depends how you do things.
And it
depends if you do things historical.
And I won't wish the war in China on a new player. But getting back to the topic at hand quickly.
True.
Question 21. Do you think the Royal Canadian Navy River-class destroyer is actually an enlarged FFG? If it is a DDG, why do you think...
So there's some context here. One.
I'm sorry. I had to finish the question, but the reason I burst out laughing is because if it is a DDG, do you think it's a better DDG than the Burks and the Hobarts?
Okay, well, so then the Hobarts, I'm going to step out on a limb here and go, it's close. But not quite. You can make the argument that they're better again than the Hobarts because of the sensors, because of the weapons that are going to be used. Even though they're down 8 cells, which hurts a lot when you only have 24 versus 32. Like, that hurts. Is it an enlarged FFG called a DDG? Yeah, it literally comes out of a guided missile frigate conversion of a ASW frigate. It literally is. There's a reason the Canadians are calling it a destroyer, though. The last time they had a combatant with any kind of capability like this, and for the era, I would say it was less capable, is the Iroquois after they get their Mark 41. Those were destroyers. There's a reason the Canadians are calling this a destroyer. Mm-hmm. Is it running a frigate radar suite? Yes.
I see they've not learned from the Germans then.
Is it running a frigate armament set? A guided missile frigate armament set and sensor? Yeah. It is.
Oh dear, Cyclic, it looks like they've the VLS is in front of the bridge. That's not going to cause any problems ever.
Well, as long as you don't pull a Germany,
Yeah.
and you keep your standard missile stocks up to date, or use somebody else's who does, and you just kind of rent them, you're fine. If you let cracks develop in your motors and still go to launch them
Oh
in
boy!
a test firing, knowing this, you have a problem.
Oh boy!
But the Australians have done the same thing. In fact, even the Royal Navy has done the same thing with CAM.
Hey.
But CAM is a significantly less energetic missile and rocket motor than a standard missile too.
Yeah.
Though it does come with the fun aspect of if the ship is moving forward at speed like it might be in combat and that motor fails to ignite, that missile's going into the bridge.
Oh boy!
Because it's cold launch. It's going to fall back and the ship's moving forward.
That's a good.
But to be honest, CAM is a perfectly valid point defense system for a ship, particularly if it's your only meaningful air warfare setup.
Yep.
But they don't compare to a Burke. If you compare a River to a Burke Flight 3, those are what you'd be comparing here. They don't come close.
Nope. Not even close. It really isn't. So
now the River's going to be better in the ASW department, but that shouldn't surprise anyone.
No. So the next question actually takes us away from the modern world. Whoopee! And also it's directed directly at me, and I can answer this in two ways because I can have this address two things. So. Discord question. Fleet, why do you want 20-inch guns on super heavy battleships? Well, technically just battleships. There's no such thing as a super heavy battleship. I found guns larger than 18 inches beyond reason for a naval vessel. Okay, so the 18-inch is where you're going to get where basically a reliable rate of fire ends. It's where your ability to be in rounds per minute lies. When you go to 20-inch, you are basically accepting that you are not going to get rounds per minute from your guns all the time. You might be close to rounds per minute, but you're not going to get rounds per minute all the time. However, the 20-inch gun is, by its own design, a bigger weapon. It reaches out further. It hits harder. And that's why I feel in a world where ships are increasing in size and lethality, you are going to see it. I mean, for example, I use it. In the Rule the Waves game, I'm playing as the Confederate States of America. I have commissioned one class of battleship with 20-inch guns, and I'm commissioning another one. Because their ability to reach out and hurt things is just unparalleled. They don't fire often, but when they do, they hit like a freight train. One 20-inch round from a salvo of 8, fired by the battleship Missouri, crippled one of Britain's 3 battle cruisers and enabled it to be swarmed and finished off, despite that ship having 14 inches of belt armor. This is the thing. In a world where armor increases, you want the ability to reach out and touch something with force and power that you just don't get from more of the same gun. It's just that sometimes you do just need a bigger gun. And especially when radar comes in. Because Moo getting into torpedo range usually means the other guy's in torpedo range. Unless I throw all of my money at torpedo development, and I'm not going to do that. But big guns are reliable. Always will be. Well, yes, but I don't... Yes, but long lances aren't something A, available to everybody, and B, it depends entirely on how the
they don't have a good record either.
Fleet, I have an immediate counter to a degree to this. How many long lance torpedoes can you carry versus how many 20-inch shells? You got a lot more 20-inch shells still.
And also, to be fair, I have destroyers to carry torpedoes. I don't think any of my combatants above a destroyer carries torpedoes. The battleships used to, but they were submerged tubes. I mean, Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix. The ships I've got are only 45,000 tons and doing about 25 knots. Yeah, they're all forward with magazine boxes and inclined belts. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why 20? What year is this, sorry?
Well, A, I've got fast carriers, and I've got battle cruisers. So my battleship...
What year is this, sorry?
1942, I think we're in now, 1943?
And you're going 25 knots?
Well, yeah.
I know they've got big guns, but I mean,
the 18...
Come on!
I mean, that's fine. It's worked well enough. I mean, the 18-inch armed battle cruisers have done the work of slowing the enemy down often enough. And if they don't get them, the 30-knot carriers absolutely will.
These just seem like stuff that would get left behind by the fleet.
Not really, especially since
Well, yeah, because it drags down the fleet speed massively.
It's not as much of a difference as you'd think in combat. Especially in large-scale fleet operations, it's not that big of a deal.
It's not just in combat, though, because going 25 knots will also mean your cruising speed is massively reduced.
Not really. Cruising speed...
Compared to on average.
Cruising speed for most of the fleet is about 16 knots. High-speed cruising, I go for about 22 for everything. It's not that big of a deal. It's a fleet. One of the things in Rule the Waves is that you have to choose your fleet doctrine. My fleet doctrine has always been, I usually stick with a tranche of battleships and battle cruisers until the Missile Age. And then the battleships die off, the battle cruisers remain, refitted with missiles. And then I build missile cruisers.
You know, I'm almost really glad Ultimate Admirals didn't get a multiplayer campaign. Because I feel you would get crushed.
Oh, yeah, Phoenix, I know. Phoenix, I don't. I do not trust them at all. Yes, they do. They do indeed suck at that kind of thing. But I'm just relaying the thing, because the question was related to it. But, anyway, I've answered that one. Well, the next one's going to be open and shut. Discord question. What if the entire current British Royal Navy with enough fuel supplies and crew was sent back to 1930? How did the Second World War go? It doesn't. As soon as Germany tries to remilitarize the Rhineland, the British go, no, that's against the treaty.
The Navy doesn't really help with that.
Really curious. Yeah, I was about to say, really curious why apparently the Navy would stop that.
The Navy doesn't stop that, even with F-35Bs and paveways. Like, that doesn't stop that. There's not enough bombing capacity there, even if you gave her 36. The Navy doesn't stop that at all. I can tell you there's going to be some very interesting things happening to German battleships via astutes, but then again, that requires the astutes to be functional as a fleet.
I mean, to be fair, the British can just use the astutes to go around the world and just sink ships they know are going to be a problem when they're on
Yes
the
and
trials.
no.
Like how can anyone prove they've been attacked by the British? Like they can't find the subs.
Fleet. You have to have the subs to do that. You have 5.
Yeah.
6 if we're being generous. And the readiness rate of that class, because if it was taken as it was today, there's a reason most of those subs are laid up.
Yeah.
Tomahawks are neat, and you can get away with not having the need to do raid mass with them, but Tomahawks without GNSS or without the how do I put this, correct visual database and mapping database, because ones from the 80s to now are not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You can't use Tomahawk guidance.
From my understanding, though, the issue with the availability on the astutes is less due to the astutes themselves and more so dockyard capacity.
Yes, they have to. So here's the thing. As it is now, they require a lot of that fleet requires specialized maintenance to be brought back into service. So unless that is done before they go, it can't happen.
Well, okay, so fair enough. So I mean, Hitler gets the Rhineland, so that's something. But I mean, the British and the French will basically be given future knowledge by the crews who've come back. Like, this is what's coming. This is what's going to happen.
To an extent.
And if any of them do know that, as soon as you do that, you've got a butterfly effect, because history then goes off the rails.
I know. Yeah.
I would argue it does create a very outsized effect, not necessarily because of the future knowledge or the ability to bomb stuff, but just the F-35's sensor suite.
That would be huge, yes.
But I will point out that the biggest obvious, politely, you send anybody with knowledge of World War II back to 1930.
If they're believed and taken seriously.
Yeah, especially with the knowledge of an event that I can't talk about on YouTube because YouTube doesn't like it. I know that the standards of the time were different, but even for the standards of the time,
they won't believe it.
So here's the other thing, Fleet. People knew the Germans were doing something violent to a lot of those people. They didn't care. They sent them back.
Have you ever heard, what's his name? Inmate 3657 or something? Polish national purposely got himself sent to Auschwitz, built up a massive spy network in Auschwitz, managed to escape and brought all of this information to the Western Allies, and they were told that's completely false. No way they would do that. Even with actual hard evidence, they didn't believe that it was that bad. Because to them, it was so outlandish, it just wouldn't happen.
I mean, I suppose you would have to be very self-defeating to put that level of resource investment into something that's a net negative during a total war. I suppose it would sound unbelievable.
No, it's not even just that. It's so... What? To people.
Yeah.
So the fun thing about killing Hitler is you probably lengthen the war.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, physics, textbook, honestly. More learning about how radar works a bit better probably goes quite nicely, because Britain's already working on standard radar. If they have any sort of things that's like, oh, well, this is how this works properly, all of a sudden, voila!
Yeah.
Sadly, the RN doesn't have NSNW, so you can't just give Bomber Harris thermonuclear weapons.
I mean, we have the missiles. So...
Well, actually, no. Here's one thing that would work. If we're talking about the entire RN going back, that means you get one Trafalgar class that's armed.
Oh dear.
Also, the Vanguard class.
Sorry, I meant Vanguard. Yeah, that's what I meant. You get one Vanguard class that's fully armed.
Which thing do we blow up first?
I can tell you exactly what is going to happen to those U-boat pens.
Oh my god, yeah, they are.
They're getting surface burst.
Oh my god, they are. That's perfect. Of course they will.
Well, if they're built, but I can tell you one thing: Germany is in for a very rough time. Their shipyards are gone.
I mean, yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking a different time period in the war, but yeah.
Yeah, honestly, Cyclic, you're right. Honestly, all of the major German ports at the start of the war, or before it, as soon as they confirm the presence of most of the German capital assets,
you could
bang.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect Germany is getting nuked that much. Though if you have something like this, it gives you options on the USSR when they're allied with the Germans invading Poland and providing the Germans with the fuel it takes to bomb
London.
The UK.
Because at that point you can just
It gives you the options to hit those refineries at no risk.
And if you do hit those refineries, that's not going to be a good time for the Soviet Union.
But at that point, it doesn't matter. You can kill two birds with one stone. The UK actually has the option.
You can hit all of the Axis fuel refineries.
And also, to be blunt,
which dramatically shortens the war.
Yeah, and you can just remove the threat of both the Soviets and the Germans in one go.
You can't well, no, you can't. That's not how nuclear weapons work.
No, that wasn't what I meant. I wasn't saying it's the nukes that are doing it. It's basically you render both states. You remove as much of the infrastructure propping up their combat power as possible.
Fleet. You don't have that many warheads.
Yeah, that's right.
You'd probably use up a good chunk of most of these warheads by going after the refineries alone, if not all of them. That is a worthwhile target. And they were targets that the UK wanted to hit. There are other things to flatten, yes, Moo, but the question is, what is the leadership making these calls at the national level in the UK decide to do? And they desperately wanted to hit refineries because it would dramatically shorten the air pressure on the UK. You could also target the aircraft factories too.
I would almost look at it from what is going to be easier, because you do still have the F-35s, so you could still strike.
F-35B doesn't have that kind of range.
Where I'm going though is you use the warheads to target the stuff the F-35 can't. And that's
for some of these things, Moo, it does. For a lot of these things, it doesn't. Like within Germany, it does from the North Sea. But I'm thinking of some of these deeper things in the Soviet Union since that's being brought up.
Yeah.
But using the Vanguard's nukes on those, and then doing the strikes against all of the dockyard infrastructure with F-35s.
Britain doesn't have a B-61 equivalent, does it?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
Unfortunate. And you know exactly why I'm saying that. Because it's not like the F-35s need to go internal only.
I mean, true, stealth isn't a factor, so you could do exterior.
Yeah, the only concern is shortened range there from drag, but, I mean, you can still hit the targets you need to hit. There's a lot of things you can do. Yeah, the problematic thing here for the warheads is Multiple warheads are tied up per missile on a Vanguard. So, yeah.
Yep. So, right. Oh boy. Thoughts? Question 22, Discord question. Thoughts on the Nimrod AEW? Do you think it's a superior and far better AEW platform than the E3?
Didn't we answer this?
No.
Yeah, we did answer this already.
No, we talked about Nimrod as a maritime patrol aircraft, but just to simply put, no, Nimrod
AEW.
Yeah,
No.
Nimrod
Yeah, it's not.
AEW, basically, if the UK continued with Nimrod AEW program until mass production, do you think the UK would still use Nimrod today as an AW aircraft? If they are stupid enough to continue with it, we'll be saddled with it. There won't be the money for E3. Politely, Nimrod AEW was canned for a good reason. It was a terrible platform. It was abysmal. It didn't have the power generations for the radars it needed to fulfill the role. It was cramped for the crew inside. And E3 is just better in every single way. The UK not going forward with this program was a really good thing. We bought E3, and it's proven to be an incredible platform. No, Knight, I don't find the alarms annoying. I kind of need them, because otherwise I don't know what's going on. Right.
I would argue that the only way such a program as that makes sense is if it is using it, is if it's also sharing at least pieces with a commercial airliner.
That's literally what Nimrod is. Nimrod is Comet.
Yeah.
Nimrod is the Comet.
And since de Havilland,
and once that commercial airliner goes out of service,
make a replacement for the Comet, replacing the Nimrod with something, or even just extending Nimrod, didn't make sense.
Yeah, I know.
Purely from an industrial-based perspective, if the Comet had succeeded and if de Havilland had survived in that form, it would probably be a very different question. But they didn't.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't think them actually continuing would have helped. Would have changed things much.
No, the problem with Nimrod is that it was good when it first entered service in all the various platforms they built it in. By the time you get to the mid to late 80s and starting to do programs based on the platform at that point, you're really past the point where you want to be doing that.
Correct, but if de Havilland had survived and made, whatever their next commercial airliner was going to be, that next commercial airliner could have been your base instead of Nimrod.
It's possible.
Well, no, it probably wouldn't have been. No, because at that point, considering how long they probably even then, I think they would actually just stick with the Nimrod, even if there was a potential replacement, because it's what they've got. And it also had plenty of upgrade programs planned very early on.
Yeah.
While Nimrods are awkward, they are also quite upgradable and have always been pretty good.
There's a reason
also,
why
part of the fact that they are simplistic is a reason they actually work well.
Yeah, the thing
because they
is,
can just swap stuff out.
Yeah, the Nimrod as an ASW maritime patrol platform served quite well into the Cold War and post-Cold War period. But when you get to a point where you need to start increasing the level of tech they carry, the airframe's just tapped out. There's
no.
a reason.
Honestly, I think...
There's a reason why the Nimrod upgrade per package failed.
And again,
I don't think these are the reasons. But it failed for reasons
platform
that you've not mentioned yet.
Would solve.
It primarily failed due to cost overruns and they had to keep negotiating contracts, and eventually the government just going, we don't need these.
I mean, to be fair...
And then quickly turn around of, yes, we do need these. Oh, well, we've already cancelled the project. Now what? Well, let's see if we can grab what's called P8s.
I mean, to be fair, honestly, getting P8s wasn't a bad idea.
Yes, but the fact that the program was meant to be started in 2003, it was cancelled before it had any chance to go anywhere, basically, in 2010. So 7 years, basically, of just going nowhere. And then even beyond that, another 6 years before the government decided, oh, well, we should actually try and get something, and then goes with the P8. That's effectively 13 to almost 16 years after what they wanted to do for the upgrade package.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it actually got the planned upgrade in 2003,
You might have seen
I
it
actually think
solder on.
they would have.
Well,
To be honest.
at least until they would have still had to be replaced by P8s, though. Like, I think that's the last upgrade you get for them. At that point, the airframes are life expired.
Yeah, but you're probably still looking into the 2030s with the British government.
I'm not sure on that one, Chief. I don't think the airframes have the flying hours, even if they're reconditioned.
The whole point was that they were going to be fully rebuilt airframes, basically
there's
from
only
scratch.
there's only so much you can do with that, and at that point, just buy P8s.
There's a lot you can do with that if the government doesn't want to spend more money.
At that point,
Like,
it'd be
you're
cheap.
thinking logically here, Fleet. But if you've just spent an awful ton on getting these planes fully refurbished, you are going to fly them as long as you can. Because, oh well, we can cut costs by not having to get new planes. These planes still work fine, therefore the fleet doesn't need anything else.
No, what I mean is the whole thing with rebuilding the airframes anyway. Just buy a new airframe. If you go into that effort, just buy a new plane.
Yeah.
It generally tends to be cheaper.
It does, but again,
This
this is how governments tend to think.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they probably would have looked at getting these sort of things in the early 2000s instead of...
Yeah.
There wasn't. That's the thing. There wasn't anything new in the early 2000s yet.
Yeah, the only way
you at least
Britain
had other
doesn't end up
options
with a
to look at,
P8
but yeah.
is if
We're
Have
talking
at
for the
least
Maritime
make
Patrol,
a
no,
next-gen
not
airline.
E3 and E767.
Yeah, we are retreading old ground a bit. But yeah, there's basically... Yeah, I think, yeah. So...
Because, keep in mind, we also did get we got 5 of the planned upgrade. So, there was potential.
Yeah. Expensive potential, but potential. Discord question 23. Do you think the US Army post-World War II had problems with procuring the right and effective self-propelled anti-aircraft, gun, or missile systems, since they had the shortcomings of Sergeant York and the Mauler, unlike the British who had the effective tracked Rapier, the Falcon, and the Stormer HVM?
There's a lot more than just those platforms.
Do you think the Chaparral and VADS aren't as good as the British SPAA systems above? Well,
Falcon was a prototype, but
yeah, exactly. I was going to say that.
VADS, VADS was always an interim. Well, was intended to be an interim, and Chaparral was also intended to be an interim. Their replacements were never really procured. This is something I would like Moo to be able to jump up into voice to address, but I don't know if he is free to do so. The U.S. Army has generally had a pretty troubled relationship with air defense, particularly mobile air defense. And I'm not sure it is something that is solvable at the vehicle levels. So to quote Moo here, Chaparral and VADS were fine. I'm assuming that is aggressively fine. In term, as in, on the effectors. So the 20mm rotary gun, and then the missile for Chaparral. They just didn't really have much for search and track.
Yeah.
Like those weren't the problems in the system that the systems had. And this is also something that goes on to things like Hawk. That you see elsewhere at higher levels of air defense. There's for mobile air defense, the U.S. Army just didn't put the effort in the programmatics, the requirements, the concepts I would say. So they had programs they wanted and they failed, and they never went back and took care of them like the U.S. Army did, or U.S. Navy did, like say Typhon. And you do have, T-249, which is a bit of a meme, and always fun.
Right. Next question. Do you think the Spruan class USS Karen was underappreciated in terms of her service during the Cold War? She was actively deployed across the world in almost every combat engagement the USN had. I mean, yes, she was, but she never fired a weapon in anger.
That doesn't mean underappreciated. Like, the Sprucans are well known for being the workhorses of the Cold War, of the late Cold War for the U.S. Navy. Them and the Perrys. Like, they're well known for that. I can't say that any Sprucan is underappreciated.
Wait, I've just had a bit of attention. I didn't realize that the Republic of China operates the kids.
Yes.
Damn. Okay. Okay, they've got more capable combatants than I thought. I know that
they're not that they're not that capable by modern standards.
Yeah. Big though. Mm-hmm.
They're a 50-year-old design.
Yeah, they've got bigger combatants than I thought. Probably could do with an upgrade or replacement at this point. Although what would the Republic of China buy to replace them?
They're basically developing their own homegrown frigates.
Yeah, that's good. Good for them. We answered this one already, but I will just very quickly say this.
No, we didn't.
Do you think the Centurion Action 10 is the best version of the Centurion tank? It's not a version of the Centurion tank. It's not. It is one of the procedures in building.
Yesn't.
The Centurion tank.
Yesn't. Centurion Action 10 is actually the 10th action of building a Centurion.
That's what I just said.
But Centurion... Let me finish. Because you missed the entirely more important bit afterwards. But what Centurion Action 10 is actually meant to be, but has been erroneously called, is the Centurion Mantless Turret. This is not to be misconstrued with the FV4202, which was also meant to be a mantletless Centurion. So, is the Centurion Mantless Turret the best Centurion? No, not really. There's basically pretty much no information on it. It doesn't, but as far as we're aware, it has a 105 gun. It's not probably better than the Centurion Mark 10, or probably the Mark 9, or really most of them.
Yeah.
So going off the well-known Centurion Mark 10, what people think? No, or Centurion Action 10? No, because most people think the Centurion Action 10... no, it doesn't actually exist or work. If you're explicitly referring to mantless turret design, then technically, yes, it's one of the better designs, but it is not one of the best ones. Like, there's a reason why the name Action X or Action 10 has plagued tank communities, because now you get stuff like Carnarvon Action 10. And there's a few others that have been starting to pop up, and it does not exist that way. Action 10 explicitly refers to the 10th action in construction. Because if I didn't get this out Foxa would, and that's not a thing you want to see her angry over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So then, next question. YouTube question: how would you fix Vasa to prevent capsizing?
Maybe don't put as much weight on her.
Yeah, raise a lower gun deck above the water a bit. I'm not that familiar with Vasa or her story, so I don't know that much about the design.
That's a Drac question, to be honest.
Yeah, that really is. YouTube, would you do a Hoi 4 game with a starting point of a Versailles Treaty-compliant Germany, or with mods suggested by your viewers? Yes, I mean, I could do that. I mean...
Treaty-compliant Germany just means no game happens.
Yeah. That game entirely relies from the perspective of the AI of Germany being the mover and shaker in Europe.
Yeah.
Well, not even...
It doesn't have to, but it...
Like, it relies on Germany doing something.
At that point,
because it's why non-historical works, but...
Yeah, at that point, I basically have... So I'm not allowed... So I can't have tanks, I can't have an air force, I have a limit of 100,000 men, I can't have railway guns, I can't have super heavy artillery, I can't have... I can't have battleships.
Your army size would be limited.
Yeah, 100,000 men.
Basically, that's like 4 divisions.
I'm basically waiting to get jumped on by the Russians, and at that point, I basically...
It's not even that. Like, multiple nations can't play the game because Germany hasn't done stuff.
Yeah.
For instance, a lot of Britain's things require there to be world tension generated, which is why whenever you notice Germany doesn't be aggressive, Britain sort of goes, so I'm basically out of the game here because I can't get my war preparation stuff going.
Looks at the US.
Yeah.
Oh, no. No, the US doesn't care. No, the US genuinely doesn't care because there's that many bypasses now. The US have a lot of things that can be finagled around it. Like, for instance, the best way to get rid of the Great Depression is you go slightly communist, then ban communism. and it just then gets rid of the Great Depression effectively.
You've had a little bit of communism as a treat. Now we're banning it.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, Canada is completely stuck with the Great Depression if there's not enough world tension. Basically, anything Commonwealth related is doomed.
Yeah, can you tell Dragon is right in his whole opinion that the Commonwealth needs an upgrade now?
It's also just the fact that the game is, as Cyclic said, the game is based around Germany doing something. If Germany doesn't do something, and it's why I've got very annoyed in some of our multiplayer games where the German player actually does just go purely peaceful, is, so now what? We can't do anything.
So in regards to one with mod suggested by my viewers, I'm happy to do that, but until I get my new PC, don't throw things like The Fire Rises at me. Or TNO. Because I can play them solo, just about. I don't think I can stream them!
Phoenix, technically speaking, there is points in playing purely peaceful Hoi games, depending on who you're playing nation-wise, because you can still influence a lot of stuff. Like Switzerland or Sweden playing purely peaceful can still have an effect on the world due to their trees. Such as Switzerland can start bankrolling both the Allies and the Axis at the same time, and then go, oh well, since we're helping you, would you mind giving us bits of France? Would you mind giving us bits of Italy? Can we have some? Can we have this? Yes, Sweden is one of our residential Swedes' pet hates because they gave Sweden one of the best focus trees in the entire game when it shouldn't have one, really, or at least it shouldn't have an impressive one.
It's a game made by the Swedes. They were always going to get a good focus tree.
Yeah. Wait, put it this way, Phoenix. Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq now have bigger focus trees than the UK does.
Right. Next question. What is the panel's favourite scene from Master and Commander: Far Side of the World? Well, honestly, I like the opening, where the two midshipmen are basically debating on whether or not they heard something, and, you know, you're the officer of the watch, what do we do? And the guy who's the officer of the watch can't make a decision, so the person with him says, "We beat to quarters," and makes that decision. And the entire ship basically comes alive as the crew all move to their stations, and Aubrey gets his, his sword on and his uniform. And then of course, after that, you've got the first engagement with Acheron, where the two ships are, it's a knife fight like most frigate engagements were. Acheron emerges from the fog, and she gets the first salvo off, and then the two ships come alongside, and there's the battering 7 bells out of each other. Now, of course, the only problem I have is that Acheron is the wrong colour and flying the wrong flag. She's supposed to be an American frigate. But of course, they didn't want to have a Hollywood film where the Americans were the quote-unquote bad guys, despite how awesome it would have been to have an American demanding the British surrender. And, you would think that having the American frigate kick the snot out of the British frigate for most of the film would have been something that the American audiences would have enjoyed. I would have thought, anyway. YouTube question. Should we have a special tune for Ruinon's rants? I don't know. Maybe. Oh boy, Discord question. What are the panel's thoughts on the first true 6th generation fighter jet, the Boeing F-47? We don't have any.
We don't know enough.
And we won't have any for at least 10 years.
Maybe not 10 years. We'll probably know a lot more before then. But, oh yeah, there's that.
The Shrike.
No, go look what it does to its prey.
The Shrike, impale on a long stick. And of course, we have won the Canards now. We have won the Canard Wars. The US has embraced the Canards.
To be fair, Shrike actually is not a bad name. I would have actually said. It
is a North American bird of prey. All we know is that they are representing it with canards in every single image that they have put out of material for it, which, to be fair, does not actually tell us anything about the aircraft. It doesn't even tell us that there are canards.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's just
we
funny.
Don't know.
It's just funny.
Canards can be very beneficial if you're looking at a tailless design and you want to maintain the ability to have maneuverability over the entire operating range of the aircraft. But it does also have some drawbacks for signature reduction.
Yeah.
But you can also mitigate those, and the US is very aware of that. One of the X-planes that almost certainly has influenced this design did exactly that.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Yeah.
Now, it is entirely possible that they are giving us the frontal profile. What they have shown us is the profile. They basically did that with B-21, but it's also possible it's not.
So, next question. YouTube. If the Italians manage to get the Allies to agree to send their surviving modern battleships into the Pacific and into action against Japan, does this increase the odds of Italy being allowed to keep them post-war? Well, possibly. But I will point out first it's going to depend on what they do. And I think...
Phoenix, you want to type up an answer to this real quick and I'll read it?
And I think they're going to be okay because, well, if you have a bunch of ships you don't quite trust, you're probably going to put them somewhere safe where you can keep an eye on them. Say... And where they can be fueled in a somewhat safe area. Let's say escorting a bunch of escort carriers. Off Samar. Which would lead to
Boy, that would be an interesting fight.
Yeah, 2 Littorios.
They'd have to have cruisers there with them, but yeah.
2 Littorios plus cruisers banging away at Yamato, Nagato, and...
They'd get clobbered.
They probably would, but the funny thing is, those 15-inch guns can actually deal with Yamato.
Yeah, but, they were demilitarized for, the Italians for a little while for a reason. There is also a lot of stuff post-war going on that, leads to a massive reduction of their fleet, as well as the cost of rebuilding their country, leading to them not bringing some ships back into service at all.
Yeah.
Sure, Dromo, but if they're at Samar, they're kind of tied there to die there to cover the escort carriers and, more importantly, the landings. They may have to die to buy time.
I mean, hey, it'll at least deny Stalin any attempt to get the Lisorios, so... And I mean, if they go down fighting, it'll be a heck of a story. I mean, who knows? They might take Yamato or Nagato with them. Which would be amusing.
That's what I'd almost want to wargame.
Like, honestly, yeah, honestly, having... you'd have to look at what ships could realistically be sent with them.
There are systems for this.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
It is something I absolutely would want to wargame, now that I think about it. Like, how would that fight actually go?
It would be fun, if nothing else.
Because it's a scenario I've never thought about before, because it could have happened. If you do everything right, but it's actually something that could have happened. Anyway, moving on. Final question. And it's a weird one. Discord, what if the South Korean and Republic of China... Republic of China's navies and air forces were magically swapped? Is it the Republic of China, not Taiwan? So... The South Koreans have the Navy and Air Force of Taiwan, but still the Army, so that's okay. They're not going to get rolled over by the North Koreans, because the Army's still in place. I mean, the Republic of China's gained a
chunk of their deterrence is in their Air Force.
Yeah, there is that as well.
It's what they rely on for a lot of counterstrike against the North Koreans and interdiction, importantly, of the vastly larger North Korean ground force.
Oh boy.
So I think overall you would significantly hurt the South Koreans' ability to deter and not help Taiwan or the Republic of China, however you want to say it. I prefer Taiwan because it pisses Beijing off more.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm implying they're independent. Rather than two nations, one nation, two systems.
That's a good way of putting it.
So, but if you gave the Republic of China the South Korean Navy, it does not... it is a more combat credible force. It is one that will die in about the same amount of time. It is a more symmetrical force, which is better for the Chinese.
Don't think I've missed any questions.
Thanks, Discord, for unmuting me when I was last in this voice call muted. Hopefully my mic noise is not too much.
No. Answered.
You're fine for the moment.
Answered.
Not worse than Dragon earlier.
Answered.
As I said, Wind kept choosing every time I wanted to unmute to go,
okay,
now I'm going to hit you.
Okay, there are two questions in 74 that were just not... that apparently I didn't get to. So, Discord question.
We do have that cruiser one that Richelieu wanted to talk about, and I don't know if Richelieu's back or not.
Yeah. How would you refit the USS Constitution in the 1940s to have her operate as an anti-submarine and anti-raid merchant?
We answered this the last time I was on Rambling.
We did. The answer,
and the answer is you don't.
Why? Yeah, you don't.
Wait,
Why? What are you
mean?
thinking? Are you sure you didn't just mark it off?
I know you have opinions about robots, but with pulling the modern Royal Navy back into the 30s, the Battle of the Atlantic isn't.
You know, Ronan, you should have a career as a station announcer with that voice. Absolutely perfect.
No, that was
platform
relatively clear.
That wasn't for me. That wasn't for me. I didn't hear a word.
You don't have the Battle of the Atlantic, was Runon's comment.
Oh.
That's the biggest thing that taking the Royal Navy back would do is
Yeah.
some nasty things are happening to German subs.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah,
You
essentially,
don't
the Royal.
you don't have a lot of them, but the sonar suites you have compared to how noisy these submarines are, as well as the very sensitive radars and the day-night optics.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be
And the
honest,
helicopters.
probably the most effective use of the Royal Navy's conventional forces in that conflict are land the F-35s and then use everything else in an anti-submarine warfare capacity.
Honestly, the QEs can probably operate fixed-wing aircraft for the period.
I have questions about the ski ramp, but they could
Swordfish.
probably retrofit something.
Swordfish, yeah. Well, worst comes to worst, you go grab some blowtorches and you just weld steel down. If it's World War II, they'd do it if they needed to. But like,
Oh, good.
Ironically enough, you could ask the US to alter the Era Cobra.
probably not
strength that
for Swordfish, Mo. The
Yeah.
QE would just need to sail flat out.
I would want arresting gear. Yeah, you would want arresting gear. I mean, you could fit very crude arresting gear. I mean, it would need resetting after each thing, but sandbags and ropes, it's crude. But for landing
Wait.
things like Swordfish, you could do it.
The QEs have no arrestor?
No, they don't need it.
No, they use Stovall aircraft. They don't.
Yeah, I
Problem
thought
is,
they had arrestor.
Nope.
yeah. Thing is, I know the
They
space.
do a rolling landing, but it's just shy of what they do for a vertical landing. With the way the jet is, the engine's carrying the thrust is carrying the weight, not the wings.
Yeah. Moo, I know that's what I was gonna say. Like, can they manufacture something that will fit in the space that the arresting gear is supposed to go in? And did the QEs bring the plans back with them for how that's supposed to look?
Well, it's also not going to be steam based.
I would be very surprised if one of the engineering crew isn't very familiar with those plans.
Even if they are, it likely doesn't matter because they are not set up for steam.
No.
And if you're talking 1940s electrics for something like that, forget it.
Yeah, don't bother.
I'm more engineeringly confident in chat because I genuinely don't know the answer to this question. How hard is it to make a linear motor? What level of electronics do you need to do it? For emails.
No. No.
I mean, a very basic
Please,
linear motor you could probably do, but something to the level of email,
Yeah, well, you don't have to because you're dealing with aircraft that can be conveniently measured in thousands of pounds, not tons.
Yeah, so what you do, Runon, in that case, is you do the 1940s standard of a hydraulic catapult.
Or a gunpowder.
Like,
Yeah. And to be honest, there's probably some motors either in spares on the ship or that you could cannibalize out of other systems to run those hydraulic pumps.
Once you point out it's possible, I wouldn't put it. I mean, it would probably be like 5 to 10 years, but they could probably come up with something electric.
Okay, Knight's saying that HMS Furious did do ski jump launches with Barracudas in 1944. The problem is that's 1944. That doesn't really solve the whole.
To be
in the 30s.
fair, I'm pretty sure the QEs in general are long enough for most British planes to take off.
No, it's the ski jump. That's the problem, Dragon. If you're taking off,
Yeah,
the
as
QE
in, I'm pretty sure they're long enough that they actually can get enough.
what
lift before the
aircraft
ski jump.
again?
Barracudas.
Hang on.
Well, I'm thinking more than just Barracudas because you've also got stuff like Swordfish, you've got Skuas.
Yeah.
Stuff
Ooh,
earlier.
what is Moo raises a good
Swordfish
point.
almost certainly can.
Would we see? What's the American plane that had the rear mounted propeller?
Which plane? Sorry.
I think you.
Like turrets. What plane were you trying to say? What did you say there?
I don't remember what it's called, but it's the American plane that has the rear mounted propeller.
Pusher XP-55 Ascender is the main one that people are aware
I
of.
would almost wonder if something like that wouldn't be.
You get the various Supermarine designs which had that because
Or alternatively,
Supermarine had these in like 42.
Or alternatively, you get an aircraft with a front-mounted
there's
a raised nose wheel.
You don't need to worry about the ramp. You've got the space to do it with most of your aircraft. Next to the ramp.
Oh yeah, you're fine. And if necessary, you just go.
Honestly, on both sides too.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah, I can see that now. Yeah.
I did. Did I not point this out earlier?
You don't need to worry about the ramp.
The ramp is fine. And besides, you might want to keep the ramp just in case you do want to operate F-35 off the carrier at some point.
Yeah.
But we were going to talk cruisers, weren't we?
Yeah, heavy cruisers.
Oh, I'm muted. That's why I can't get a word in edgewise. Okay, that answered that question. Well, I muted myself because I almost dropped my phone, and I figured I would cut at least some of the noise for everybody listening. Now I'm in my car. There's theoretically less noise, although apparently there's an annoying rattle. Sorry about the annoying rattle. I can't hear it, so I don't know what to tell you.
I can't hear it.
I can't hear it
at the moment. We're not.
Anyway, the one thing, and while the panel does seem to have come to the consensus that a sender would not need, and most aircraft would not need, the use of the ramp, the one thing I would be concerned about with an aircraft like the Ascender, if it were to use the ramp, is tail strikes on takeoff.
Point.
Because
it's got to be able to pull up anyways, so...
Yeah. Well, usually most of the footage I've seen, even with... I haven't seen... Now, I'll freely admit, I haven't seen footage of takeoff from a ski jump. I will admit that much. However, most of the footage I've seen of carrier launches, even with the aircraft at full tilt on a catapult, is that it does tend to sink a little bit. Buddy, what are you doing? Yeah, okay, sorry. Idiot in the F-150. If the aircraft tends to sink a little bit after it leaves the deck. Did it?
Yep, don't worry. You're still alive.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, everything went dead quiet, and I thought somebody would tell me something different.
It keeps happening. Yeah.
I'm just doing some Googling trying to find more info on this Supermarine pusher prop.
It was one of their.
Also,
it was one of their tandems. They had a tandem one as well.
Like the seeing they did.
It was a thing that never really went anywhere. Is the problem? Like the design was there, they didn't because just build more Spitfire, please.
You know what? I need to look at the photos of some of my work because I just had a very concerning idea pop through my head. Well, I'll take advantage of the lull and I'll give you a little micro rant because I actually don't have that much to rant about last night after traumatizing the AC Naval History crew last night after the live. Apparently, I made Montana cry, which is allegedly functionally impossible. I take that as a sign of my abilities as a Discord mod to make a community member visibly upset. Anyway, so Eddie, the Siemens tech, who I seem to be the primary interface with now, even though I don't get paid to do that, came in and he said, well, you know, the only thing I found on this one panel that you did is that you had a hot and neutral reversed. I'm not saying it's impossible. I've made mistakes before. I am saying that with $10,000 of components, I tend to be a little bit paranoid about stuff like that.
Understandable.
And the problem is it's going into electronics, which can be polarity sensitive for AC, which is not usually an issue. But if you're going straight into AC-based electronics, they can be polarity sensitive. So my brain's dastardly thoughts simulator is, I wonder if a certain someone in my hierarchy may have attempted to fuck me over. And go to the next level of Blue Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, and I have photos to prove otherwise, I'm going to get up with Eddie and ask some questions about. Excuse me, what the fuck?
Anyways, shall we get Richelieu to answer that heavy cruiser question?
Heavy cruisy.
And I think if we do that, it'll do to reread
yes,
that
I will
question.
answer the heavy cruisy question.
It was about
Is it
But I forgot the question.
heavy cruisy that goes along with that dummy thick warhead?
Fuck. No, I'm never gonna
Inflicting
hear the
psychic
end.
damage on Fleet.
Fuck. Oh, it's almost as bad as. Oh no! Don't bury your head in it. You'll just bring up that again.
Runon,
So
please
the
roll
question-
a d6 to deal
So the
for
question-
how much psychic damage you dealt to Fleet.
So the question was: do you think the IGN has the best pre-war heavy cruisers of all the major powers, and do you think
Not
they
at
could
all.
win a surface engagement against a county or a York?
A York and a county already have better frontal. Oh, well, actually, 1 second. I have to check something.
Okay, it's a
What's
D6, but it's a 6. It's a digital D6, but it is a 6.
Oh boy, the damage!
All right.
Oh, how will I ever live with it? I'm melting! I'm melting!
If that was in 40k, you'd be dead.
Nah.
Yeah, that would also be that would, depending on what you've got. That could be mortal wounds on top of that.
Nah, mate, I'd win.
Like, and it depends also. 'cause then there's-
Warhammer?
Not
No,
quite, but
no,
we're
no, we're not
talking
talking
heavy
about
cruisers.
Warhammer. Like, you say that word,
Listen,
she
Mortal wounds
appears.
can't be healed.
All right, can we get to this question, please?
Well, yeah, with
Alright,
so, there is no
way.
way Fleet has more than 3 wounds. I just got to put that out there. There is no way Fleet has more than 3 wounds.
I don't
Oh,
think
no,
it's more than
no,
two.
no. I'm sorry. Fleet's got the same stat block as the rest of his people. The Great Unclean Ones.
Okay, that's just unfair.
That's harsh. No. Fleet at least takes a shower.
Anyway,
Oh, so he's the
moving
Great
on.
Clean One then.
Moving on, because this one's actually interesting. This question is going to be an interesting discussion.
Right. So a county or a York versus like a Miyoko, right?
I mean, it doesn't
Or a
say.
Kurotaka.
It doesn't say.
It doesn't
yeah, exactly.
say, so it's
That's
sort
the
of
thing,
like
right?
Miyoko, Atago, Mogami,
Oof.
because it just says all of them in general.
Tone as well, if you want to throw that one in for the...
What I prefer about the British, how do you say, philosophy of the armor, other cruisers, is that they actually start with box around the citadel, the magazines, and then looking at what other weight of armor they have left, they start armoring the rest of the ship, like the turrets, a little bit of the machinery. But with the Japanese cruisers, you see they have less coverage as well, and also like same thickness for the Miyokos and the Kens, but less coverage, and then also no armor on the barbettes and the turrets. But then you also see massive machinery belts, which I don't really understand, because normally you would first want to, protect your firepower and your magazines first, and then allocate the rest of the displacement you have to machinery armor, which would then be, of course, thinner than the magazine armor. But I don't know. Also, the weird funnel uptake armor thicknesses, which is like 90 millimeters in the Japanese heavy cruisers. Why? They really don't need it much, just use armored gratings, right? I don't really get that. It's a lot of wasted tonnage on armor you don't really need in places. Yeah, that's my opinion about it.
And I'm sorry, which class of cruisers is this in reference to?
I think the Miyokos mostly.
Okay, thank you.
In general, I do feel that they get even more. Like, the Japanese also have other flaws, and Britain do get stuff like the better fire control and very quickly get radar on the counties.
Also, the Japanese don't even have caps on their projectiles. The British do have caps on their Asian shells, which give them a massive advantage. Like a crazy advantage, actually. The Japanese get lucky that a lot of other heavy cruisers have homogeneous armor belts, which are a little bit milder to the Japanese 8-inch shells. But once you get up to like a Baltimore or something, those shells just shatter against the face-hardened armor of the belt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, just want to clear one thing up you said just now. Was that
Yes.
Golf Alpha or Charlie Alpha? Because I heard Golf Alpha Papa Gap.
Cap. Charlie Alpha.
Yes,
Papa.
Gap.
Thank you.
So that's also a point. Yeah. It's people love to hark on about how German armor design is inefficient, but when you look at the Japanese 3D heavy cruisers, you could also make an argument for that being very inefficient. That's my take on it, at least.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Honestly, I think I find most heavy cruisers of the Treaty era get harked on, apart from the Japanese ones and to a degree certain American ones. Like, because people like to rag on the counties a lot, but
yeah, they do, but
the counties got the job done.
They did the treaty cruiser focus that you should always go for is first your magazine boxes should be protected against what kind of shell you want at a certain range, right? That's where you start. So just make sure your ship doesn't explode outright. Because then your ship is gone, and it doesn't matter if your machinery gets knocked out first or a turret gets knocked out first, whatever. So first you focus on that. Then possibly you want to focus on your deck armor, of course, but that's part of the magazine box. Then you want to focus on maintaining your firepower to a certain degree, and then I would put everything else into machinery and steering gear protection. But always start with the magazine box, which is not what the Japanese did, because unlike the Furutakas, they have a 51mm magazine box, and the machinery belt for some reason is 3 inches, which is 76. Which is like, why? Why is there more protection around the machinery than the fucking explosive bits, right? Why?
Because in that regard, another one that I always find amusing is I don't know how to pronounce this properly, but the Duquesne class?
Duquesne,
the French first heavy cruisers, like,
yes.
They basically went,
right.
What is armor?
I was going to start about that as well. It's an interesting story, right? So France loses its northern territory to Germany in World War One. A lot of the heavy steel industry and the precision steel industry was located there, and a lot of it was destroyed. So in the post-war era, you have Germany, which has a mostly intact steel industry, Belgium, which has a growing steel industry, you have Britain, Italy. They all have very, basically intact steel industries. So they're able to really control the market, while France has to focus on rebuilding that first. Mm-hmm. So in this time period, they still have the heavy armor manufacturers, because those are located around where the shell manufacturers are as well, so that's fine. But ship construction steel is an issue. So they have softer, not softer, but how do you say it? Less high tensile strength steel than, say, Italy or Japan or Britain with the dual steel, right?
Yeah.
Or I guess the other one.
Or America with STS. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was getting there.
I love STS as well. So, for example, how can you picture this? for French steel, ship construction steel at this point, it was about 50 kilograms per square millimeter before the steel started deforming, right? But for ducal steel, or for Japanese ducal steel, or Italian or American STS, it's about 64 kilograms per square millimeter, right? So you get about 20% extra strength for the same weight in anything that isn't French structural steel, right? Which means that on the first 3D designs of Italy, Japan, America, they have decent armor around the magazines and machinery, right? The Trentos have 70 millimeters almost everywhere. The Americans have 51 millimeters and 3-inch over the magazines, I think, with the Pensacola's. Something like that. The Japanese have 3 inches and 2 inches. You see? But France doesn't have anything that they can put in the armor because everything has gone into the hull to get it to be as relatively as strong as the other hulls from foreign nations. But because the steel is weaker, they have to be 20% overbuilt, so to say.
Question.
So yeah.
Has the special treatment in special treatment steel been open sourced yet, or is that still information controlled?
I think it's pretty. No, it's well known how it's made, actually.
Okay. I know that sometimes classification authorities don't apply logic or reality to.
I think maybe for the steels that are the HY80, which is an upgrade from the STS that's being used on modern American ships, I think that may be still a little classified. I think the HY steels are an evolution of STS. Wattissimo. I don't know.
Yes, Foxo, I think that does indeed sum it up pretty well. Because in the same period, you're getting the
alloying is a little bit different, but they're still an evolution.
So just to confirm, do the Donetsks actually have a full armor belt or no? Because
they have nothing. They have a 30 millimeter armor box.
I wanted to confirm that because I keep seeing it only has 30 millimeter around the magazine. And with what I was just discussing with Foxo,
if you look at the evolution of French heavy cruiser armor schemes, you start off with the Duquesne, which has 30 millimeter armor over the boxes, but this is still armor grade steel, right? So it's not a weaker structural steel. So that's all they can afford in terms of armor, but they start at least with putting it over the magazines, right? Then, when they get to the Suffren class, they put 50 millimeters of steel over the magazine boxes, and they have a lot of weight left over from more efficient design and some improvements in the French metallurgy industry in that sector. So then they can put also a 50 millimeter belt on the machinery, right? And a little bit of armor on the turrets and barbettes. Then you get to Colbert. No, sorry, not Colbert. Colbert is the same as Suffren in armor-wise, but then you get Foch and Dupleix, which get even more armor over the magazines, from 54 to 60 millimeters, and also over the machinery. And that's also because, and they also get a lot more coverage, which is pretty nice, because the French kept the requirements for the armor pretty low, like keeping DD rounds out at like 10k yards, something like that, right? And then they get their steel industry back more or less in 1926-ish, which is right around the time when Algeria is being looked into. And then they switch up the entire design.
Yeah, suddenly.
Yeah, they switch up the entire design, and suddenly, boom, you have a treaty cruiser. Wow, where did that come from? Amazing. So yeah. It was painful at the start, but we got there.
Yeah, admittedly, you then get Algeria, which is a very good cruiser.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, if you were able to get more Algeries, would have been quite interesting.
If I were able to...
Go on.
No, you can. I was
going to say the plans for the Saint Louis that we are aware of.
I cry every night for those.
He cries every. This is a sad story. He cries every team.
I do feel obligated to point out, Richelieu, and please don't take too much offense at this, but it was painful at the start, but we got there. Could almost be the French national motto, post
That's
revolution.
true.
So
No, that's true.
Right.
right.
So very.
You don't get the European love of 8-gun 4 turrets. Well,
that's
it works.
that's
Like,
design requirements.
yeah,
American heavy cruisers are gun based, so yeah, they have more guns.
also, there's a lot of nations still have part of it in Europe. Still have the whole thing of if you lose one turret and you've got 3 triple turrets, you've lost 33% of your firepower. You go down to 6 guns. If you lose one of your turrets when you've got 4 twins, you're still down to 6 guns.
Yeah. Also, if you just look at... Yeah, go on.
It's got a bit of redundancy built in.
I'm going to throw Fleet a bone here because I can hear the tone in his voice and judging by the context and time, he's trying to close us out by asking, Fleet, when you do your outro, do you want to reference or flog any of this Sunday's shenaniganeries which will be occurring or have been threatened to occur?
So I don't know too much, but I'll say what I know. So thank you everyone for coming. We got through relatively quickly. About 2 hours, 10 minutes, so we didn't do too badly. What I will say is there are a few announcements that I need to make. So Dr. Clark, all of you probably know him, on this Sunday it'll be 5 years that he'll have been running his channel. And I think he's going to be doing some things to celebrate. But I'm not sure exactly what.
And I swear to God, if that bot doesn't work, I'm going to go on a jihad against YouTube.
Alright, that's definitely a phrase.
Hey, but Larry and Jihad, are you telling me?
Demonetized in 5.
I'm not monetized anyway, so it's fine. He's allowed to say that now.
Never getting monetized in.
Damn it, Cyclic! Stop it! Stop it!
Cyclic, far worse has been said about the platform on other channels.
I'm aware. That doesn't mean they won't selectively.
Yeah, they go after their targets based on how easy they are to coerce, rather than, you know, what they said.
Yeah, like, I agree with Moo. Like, the 2 Royal Navy supercruiser designs, or quote-unquote supercruisers, of either 3 quads or 3 triples, and then there's that random design, which is actually 3.
Yeah, the other thing about the 4 twins, I want to bring some attention to some stuff Phoenix said.
Can I finish out, please?
Right,
yeah, real quick. This is just capping it off. This is just capping it off, Fleet.
Well, I was going to say, if we wait a second, Cyclic, and we just take over after Fleet's done.
Yeah,
I know. I just want to cap his. I want to cap his stream off with this because this is the part of something that stemmed from that last question. So that 4 twins for a total of 8 guns, you have a lot of beam consideration going on, both for things like what the Italians had, but also for maintaining higher cruising speeds. If your beam is finer, your cruising speed, it's easier to obtain a speed, whether that's going to be your cruising speed or your top speed. So a twin turret is able to go into a narrower beam than a triple. You have a whole bunch of different considerations in there. So.
Yeah, and the American choice for triples also has a lot of different consequences, and yeah, there's also a lot of reasons why they went for triples in the first place on those, which also affected the armor design, but maybe I can get into that later.
Oh, that's not good.
Oh boy.
Incoming!
So, like I said...
Fire brigade! Incoming!
Yeah, so, thank you everybody for coming. Yeah, don't forget, those of you who do watch Dr. Clark, go and tune into what he's got planned. I think he's got certain things on the works. Don't quite know what he's planning to do to celebrate the special occasion, but I'll try to be there if I can. Also, again, coming up to May, which will be, obviously, I keep saying it, but this is like the end of the month. I probably will say at the end of April as well. Coming up on May, coming up on May 19th, which will be the last ramblings here in the dry dock, and I will revive, hopefully, with permission of the Admiralty, an old tradition. and I will accidentally ping the entire server for the last ramblings, just like old times.
Accidental. Fleet, if you.
I
Fleet, if you-
remember that. Like, why do I
Well,
keep
now that you
thinking
said
about
it, it's
something I don't
guaranteed to
think
not be interpreted as accidental.
Accidental.
It's fine. Well, no, it's fine because it can't be accidental because I've got to get permission
Also-
first. But it was
Yeah.
more just a reference to the fact that we used to drag in the entire server at one point. That was fun. Good times. Good
I do
times.
not want to imagine the rage that's going to induce.
Oh well, they can stuff it.
It always does.
Like
People
I-
can
I am-
conceive.
like,
I'm
I am
not sure I'll sign off on that because the consequences.
What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? I'm leaving.
Not my turf to moderate, not my problem to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
So here's the fun part, Fleet.
At
What
that
can
point-
I do?
A lot.
I can delete the channel if I want.
Oh my god, that would be even worse.
I
Where's
can
the
kick
ping?
you from the
Where's
server
the ping?
if I want. There's a lot I can do.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. But it will be. I'm hoping that I'll get to do it because it'll be a nice ending.
We'll see.
And besides, I'm planning to have I don't think you realize the amount of people I'm bringing in. I want to get.
Bets on this exploding.
I
in his
want.
face.
So, I'm gonna try and get Drac, Dr. Clark, Rex's Hangar, the Chieftain, the Shipyard. Those are the 5 I absolutely want to get. And then
Is this for Monday?
No, this is for this is for a long way off, not till May the 19th.
Okay. So I was like, you.
May
if
the
this is
19th.
next Monday.
Okay, I might try and
need to be
take that off.
contacting
We'll
those
see.
people much further in advance, my dude.
Dude, that is 2 months away. That is 2 months
Yeah,
away.
when one of them is a lieutenant colonel in a military, you need to be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually worked so far. Me and the Chieftain usually
Yes,
work on
but-
those cycles.
Okay.
Alright. In the most oblique way possible, that is a lieutenant colonel in a military that is currently being shaken up.
So it's not even that. It's a lieutenant colonel currently in charge of a battalion-sized unit.
Mm-hmm.
Is he? We're talking chieftain, right?
Mm-hmm. He's got a cavalry squadron now.
Hey.
Isn't? Has he been pseudo-activated to be admin person?
Don't think so.
But yeah, so like I said, these are try to get. I will not guarantee anything until I know. And of course, I do also have some other people that I want to try and get, but I'm not going to announce them because I don't know whether I'm going to get them or not. But yeah, so that's coming up. That'll be fun. Right, I'm going to say goodbye to YouTube now, so good.